Okay, so it's the final weekend before the case study next week. And I just want to give you my thoughts on what you should be doing over these next few days in order to really get the most out of your exam, in order to hopefully get the marks you need to pass. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be running through the key skills that you need in order to pass and really where you ought to be at this point. Now, some of you would have been working really hard, really focused, really prepared well, and you're kind of going into these last few days in very much a revision phase, kind of like, you're already in a strong position, it's just backing it up. Others of you will be thinking far more about, oh my gosh, I haven't done enough work. What am I going to do? What are the key things I need to do in order to get through? So I'm going to try and cover it from both perspectives. Now, I really hope you're in the first of the scenarios, but I'm fully aware that there'll be quite a few of you for various reasons, work pressures, personal pressures, just can't get down to the work, whatever reasons, that you've got a lot of work to do with these next few days to go. Okay, so let's go through the key things that you need to be good at on exam day. Let's start with theory. So if you're at the operational case study level, theory is really important. It's something which is a major part of the questions. It's very important you understand that theory. So hopefully at this stage, where you should be is you should have revised all the key theories and really, you've done them during the OT exams and you're in a reasonable position now to have a good background knowledge of each of those. The theories aren't typically tested in detail, not as much detail as the OT level, so you need an overview only at this stage. If you haven't been through those OT theories and you're doing the operational case study, then now is the time to do so. Have a look at our study text part 1, which summarizes all the E1, the P1 and the F1, the massive information down into a condensed fashion. There would still be a lot to get through over a weekend, to be honest with you, but it will break it all down. Don't go trying to learn everything and don't learn all the numbers because you won't be examined on numbers in your exam. So do some revision of that if you're at the operational case study level. MCS, SCS, management and strategic level, it's far less important. The exam is far more about, here's a business scenario, analyze that and give us your views, give us your recommendations, give us your analysis. Particularly at strategic level, I wouldn't be doing any more work on theory. Theory is so unimportant in terms of what it takes to pass. At this stage, you are better doing other stuff. Even at MCS, I wouldn't spend much time on it. If you do spend time, a quick review of the key theories, again, our study text part 1 can help you with that. Study text part 2. Oh, part 1s and part 2s, I get them mixed up. Our part 1 is all about exam technique, how to approach the exam. Part 2 is the revision of the theories. It's the part 2 one that's the key one for you. Okay, so theory then, not so important for MCS and SCS. Don't be wasting your time spending a lot of time on that. Next then is exam technique. The study text part 1, if I get it right this time. And with that one, it's really crucial that you've got certain key skills. First key skill is what the exam is like. You've seen past exams, you know what your role is, you know the format of the exam, the approach to take to pass. Secondly, your technique needs to be very strong. How good is your planning approach? Have you got a set approach to planning your answers? So that first 10 to 12 minutes of reading through the question and structuring your answer is really well used. Planning makes an enormous difference to the final mark that you will get. Secondly, have you mastered the structure of your answers? Have you got headings and then points of about 3, 4, 5 lines where you make the point, you explain that point, then you add some extra value, you say something more, you apply to the pre-scene. And when you look at the answers, practice answers you've done, which I'm hoping you have, you'll see that structure. Heading, paragraph, maybe another paragraph, another heading, paragraph, with your key points structured in heading. So now, have you got your planning mastered? Have you got your writing structure and technique mastered? Those make enormous difference to the marks you get. that just the structuring of your answers and the way you approach those can make 10-20% difference. I remember I had a student on a course once. He'd failed an exam 4 times. He'd just got 29% in the exam. We worked only on one thing, and that was his writing structure. He got 69%, 69, a 40% improvement, just because he was writing the answers out in the right way. He was attempting everything else in the same way. It's just that a normal writing approach just wasn't scoring marks for him. He was an exceptional case. He really was. But it really makes a massive difference. So, have you done lots of practice of planning, practice of writing answers in the right way? If you look at your solutions and your plans, are you happy with those? So if you haven't done much on those, then again, Study Text Part 1, I analyse how to do that. Also my tuition videos. To be honest with you, it's a little late to be going right back to basics like this. But look, if you're in that situation of not having mastered that, you've got a weekend to do it. That will make far more difference to your final mark than we'll go back revising theory. So do practice that if you haven't got good. If you are already quite strong, just continue the practice. My biggest recommendation for most people over these next few days is practicing questions. Question practice after question practice after question practice. You will be honing your skills in terms of planning, structuring. You'll see a lot more different types of questions. So hopefully something similar will come up on exam day. So you'll already be well prepared. You'll be focused on the pre-scene because you've been really focusing on what does this mean for the pre-scene and this, thinking about the strategy of the company and so on. It's that practice that makes perfect. So that's what most people should be doing going forward. And if exam technique is a failure of yours, definitely do a lot of that. Learn what you need to do and then practice. Okay, our next key skill then that you need is knowledge of the pre-scene. I'm hoping by now you've read through the pre-scene, you've analysed the pre-scene, perhaps you've even watched our pre-scene videos, so you really understand the company. Perhaps you've read our industry analysis or done your own industry research. Now, you should be in the situation where you really know the pre-scene well, you've already answered questions on it, you've been through the industry and you understand the industry. What you need to be doing in this final stage, if you've got all those skills, is learning some industry examples. I would recommend 20-25 that you learn and you bring them in. This is again where the practice questions come in. Practice as you're doing questions, having learned some industry examples, where to bring them in, which type of issues to bring which real life industry examples into. Industry examples do score good marks, particularly at strategic level. At management level, yes. Operational level, not so much so because it's more theory. But actually, if you can bring them in, they will score marks. It's just harder to often on the operational level. But if you can, it's still worth really, really good marks through doing that. So we're coming to the end now. You need to learn those industry examples so they just come in the exam. Memorize a set phrase that you can use, that you can bring up. Do remember in the exam, don't just throw them in anywhere. The examiner hates industry examples that are irrelevant, just thrown in like it's all pre-learnt. They have to be relevant to the question that you're being asked. And as long as they are relevant and you're making, the best thing to do is make a conclusion with your industry example. Okay? So you say, well, such and such a real life company, they did this, and this. And we can learn from this by following suit. Or this shows that the market generally is moving this direction and we must carry on in that direction. Or they were very unsuccessful when they did that, so we shouldn't do that either. So you're using it to make a conclusion. So it's really, really good analysis if you can do that. Okay, so that's what you should be doing if you're in a good position. If you have not looked at the pre-scene very much, not done a full strategic analysis of the pre-scene, you really need to be getting on and doing that this weekend. You need to go into the exam with a decent knowledge of that company. The other thing I'd really recommend for you this weekend on the pre-scene is to create a one-page fact sheet. What you're looking for are the key items that you'll be learning for the exam. You're thinking about, if we're looking at the income statement, if we're looking at the statement of financial position, what's the gearing figure? What percentage is that? Do you know that? What's the cash figure? I mean, gearing, by the way, really important figure because that will affect the level of debt that we can raise in the future. Financing questions at all three levels are very common. And so therefore, if we've got high gearing and you remember the figure and you can put that in, you can justify why, say, it would be hard to raise more debt if there's high gearing, or if there's low gearing, why it would be easy to raise more debt. Adding that number in, that, 45%, really shows that you know the company, and the examiner loves nothing more than you showing your knowledge of the pre-scene and applying answers to the pre-scene. You will see all three examiners again and again and again are looking for application. You make a point and you apply it to this company, say what it means for this company. If you can bring in statistics, fantastic. So gearing, what's the cash that's available? Just remember, let's say there's a business and there's $30 million of cash that's available to them. Remember, a lot of that is needed for working capital. That's not money just, go and spend it. Let's say the company's got 100 million of revenues. They actually need to buy stock, to pay salaries, to pay leases. Of that 30 million, how much is available? 10? 5? It's hard to say without seeing your case, but it's going to be a small amount that's available for investment in some new project. Okay, so do remember that as well. I just throw that in as a caveat, because how often I see people who say there's 30 million available to spend on this new project. No, most of it will be needed for day-to-day cash flows. Okay, so where's the money going to come from? And actually, just as a general tip on any new project, on any new development, always consider financing. Or is it equity? Is it debt finance? If we've got money as cash. Anyway, so cash available. Gearing. You might want to learn some of your ratios, like the inventory days ratio, debtors day, and so on. Okay, receivables day, I should call it. You have to forgive me. Debtors days was the way I learnt it when I was taught for many years of debtor days before it all moved over to the international terminology of receivables days, and so on. Okay, so those key statistics, you want them in here, so that in the exam they're just there, they're just available to you. Please do not go back and look at the pre-scene on exam day to pick those figures out. You do not have the time. It's a real race to the end in the exam to get as many points down as possible. I know when I'm in class, what I sometimes do in class is that I set a big question for people and I answer that at the same time. And of course, I'm under real pressure. I'm there typing away, on the screen behind me, the answers coming up. I'm under unbelievable pressure to almost come up with a perfect answer while everyone else is doing those. And I know when I'm doing that, I will never, ever look back at the pre-scene. And to be honest with you, typically I won't look back at the unseen. I will trust in the plan and I will just write and write and write. And I will keep on writing. If I've got a figure in my head, I will put that down. If I've got to go and look that up, I don't, because it's just too much time pressure for me to do that. Now, of course, I'm trying to create the perfect answer in the time, and so I've got to get a lot of volume in there to show that often what I'm trying to show is it can be done. People often don't believe that you can produce a really long answer in the exam to get lots of really good points in. So I'm trying to show that from your point of view, you won't be after the perfect answer. You want a passing answer. But if you can keep a lot of figures in your head that you've learned and you bring those up in the exam just because you know them, that will come across very well to the examiner and it will save you time. So learn a lot of key facts about the company, the people in the company. If you've got directors mentioned, who are they? What are their names? What are their roles? The types of markets that the company is in. If there's competitors mentioned, then remember the names of the competitors and some of the statistics about those. It's up to you to pick out from your case what you think those are. So a one-page fact sheet for you to memorize, so when you go into the exam you can use those items and you don't actually have to continue, don't look them up on the exam day. That will save you a lot of time and also it will get you well prepared as well. So that is the pre-scene. Next thing you should have done at this stage is you should have taken mocks, and ideally you would have had feedback. My hope is you've been getting feedback from markers on you haven't done this so well, or you've done this really well, keep on doing that. This is okay, do it this differently, this differently, this differently. That's not so good. You definitely need to improve, whatever it is. So you've had personal feedback. It's all very well me telling you what it takes to pass, but it's very hard to do it in practice, and that's where the feedback comes in. So I'm hoping you've had that. Now, if that's the case, you need to go back through the feedback that you've had from your mocks and practice specifically overcoming those weaknesses. So the next few days are mock exam after mock exam, or practice question after practice question. Something like our ethics pack, for instance, has got a whole load of ethics type questions that you can practice. So you can practice those types of questions as well. And you're practicing to improve your areas of weakness. Okay. Now, if you've yet to do mock exams, that's the most important thing you can do. It's probably a bit late for you to get feedback. You might have a friend or a colleague that could look it through for you. That might be a useful thing for you to do. But practicing mock exams, mastering your structure, your planning, your time management, which I haven't talked about. Time management is so important. Mastering those things over the next few days, that will get you more marks than spending an enormous amount of time on the pre-scene or going back to theory, because exam technique is probably more important in terms of actually scoring marks. It's the thing I see in students that fail, that typically when I'm working with students that have failed, I'm not really working on their theory or their pre-scene knowledge. I'm typically working on their exam technique and approach, because that typically is the differentiating factor. Their business analysis is another sort of element. It's not the theory, it's the way they've analysed it in relation to the pre-scene, and they're bringing out the points. And most people have got the points in here, it's just I need to kind of encourage them out. That's what you need to work on. Hence, mock exams the most important thing. Okay. So, in summary, lots of mocks, that one-page summary of the pre-scene, bit of revision of theory at the operational level in particular, a bit less so at the other levels. Review through the pre-scene, one more read through, so you really get your head around that pre-scene. And if you're in a worse position, well, you've got a lot of work to do, and you might go back to basics a little bit more. Exam technique and mock exams are the key thing to focus on if you're in that position. Whatever happens in terms of your next few days of work, I really do wish you the best of luck on exam day. You know what it's like. You go into the exam, there's various different variants that you could get. You get the right ones that you really like, and that's going to really help you. So I hope you get a really nice variant that's just right for you, and that it all flows well on exam day. Don't get too stressed about it. Go into that exam thinking, right, well, I've done all the work I'm going to do. I'm just going to do the best I can. And actually, if I fail, I'll take it next time round. Go in with that attitude, even though you really want to pass, but go in with that attitude, and it will help you to be relaxed and do the best you can. And that's all you can do on exam day, is the best you can. So go in with that approach, do the best you can, and I really wish you the best of luck in the exam.